Welcome to the Tom Golly Official Podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow on all social media and anywhere you podcast. Video version on YouTube, audio only. Again, everywhere you podcast. With me today is one of the coolest people that I've had the pleasure of meeting. He's told me his very cool story many a times, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit today. But he's a producer, a songwriter. He has a podcast. So I'll kind of let him tell a little more about what he does and who he is, but please welcome Chris Clayton. What's up, Chris?
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You?
Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure, man. I know, we met for the first time at I think it was a Kingdom songwriter.
Yeah, a few years back.
It was many years back, and to be honest, I used to be on social media a lot more than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you first move to a new place, you want to learn who's who, and it seemed like you knew everybody in town.
Well,
and then
maybe
at least from my perspective,
sure.
A new in town, just like looking, okay, who do I have to like talk to know what the story is? And you were one of the guys that I was kind of paying attention to. And then out of the blue, you kind of messaged me one day like, hey, I want to be part of the songwriting
I remember that, yeah.
And I'm just like, me? Why? Like, why would you invite me? And at that point, I was like just starting. I'd probably only written like 3 or 4 songs.
Yeah.
I was working on my first EP, and I was just kind of like, yeah, I got invited to this thing. Cool, let's do it. And then it's like, well, you have to submit a song you wrote. Now I'm like, oh no, I've written 4 songs, and they're all going to be on like a record. And it was just a mind blowing thing. And thankfully, you guys didn't hate the song that I sent in. The song I sent in actually was on my EP. It was called Not Going Back. Wasn't quite the worship tune that a lot of that was oriented toward, but I mean the skills that you guys taught,
right?
It translated. It's
sure.
just, I will admit, I mean, I got hooked on that whole, just that whole scene, man. The songwriting, the people being passionate about just wanting to share the story of God in unique ways.
Yeah.
And, the difference that I ran into a lot is what I found in that whole scene was I wanted to write for radio, write for the atheists to want to hear a song that's like, cool, I can listen to that. Whereas a lot of other people are like, well, I want my church to sing this.
Right.
So it's like, so it was a little challenging, but I got so much out of that. And the hard thing for me nowadays, when I write with friends of mine who have gone to Kingdom songs and stuff, there's certain verbiage they use where I'm like, it's like, listen, I know Tony Wood said that, but it's not the rule always.
It's true.
It's like, you know Tony Wood? No, but I've heard him speak, and I've been to Kingdom songs. Me
right.
too. It's like, okay.
There's a tribe of us now out there.
There is, yeah. And there's this certain lingo. I'm trying to think of some of the Kingdom song isms that pop up. I wasn't even planning to talk about this, but what are they? Gosh, it's just, I mean, some of them are Teely used to always talk about the rule of 3 a lot.
Right.
So it's like, well, I want to do it 4 times, but Teely said 3. It's like, okay, fine. Teely's not wrong. We'll do it his way. And then it's right. But no, but dude, honestly though, if it wasn't for you reaching out, I probably never would have joined that community. I never would have met a lot of the people I've gotten to meet. And I'm just grateful that you took the time to reach out.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure on one hand, it was a business thing of, hey, we need butts in the seats. But at the same time, you could have reached out to a lot of other people, and you reached out to me. So,
well, we're just trying to build community during that time. Just people who were passionate about writing for the church or writing for industry, or whatever, whatever it looks like. Just trying to find people that would want to be a part of that and grow.
Yeah.
So
and I think I was still relatively new to Nashville at that time. And I was probably in the middle of feeling sorry for myself going, why did I move to Nashville? No one here talks to me. And then it's like, oh, wait, you're inviting me to this? Okay. And that really kicked off a lot for me as far as helping me. And I definitely definitely helped me grow and really look, because I came to Nashville, I didn't want to write songs. I was just like, I just want to sing. I'll find songwriters. They'll write my songs.
Yeah.
Then I kind of discovered that, well, no, in this genre, for the most part, you have to write your own stuff.
Yeah.
And, just discovering how it's really not that scary. And the crazy thing for me has been, and tell me about this experience for you, when when you first started writing with pros, for me, one of the things that I noticed is that they were sometimes just as nervous to be writing with me or a relative rookie than I was to be writing with them in a lot of cases. Have you found that?
Yeah. I think it's always, especially the first write when you're writing with any songwriter, it's always, what am I getting myself into? What should I expect from this? So I think everybody's a little on edge of going, we know reputations, we know songs they've written before,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean it's always going to unpack the same way as it did in how those songs came about.
Right.
So I think everybody's on a little bit of okay, how's this going to go? Until you develop that relationship, and now you've written with them 3 or 4 times, and you just get in the room, and it's more built on friendship than built on what do we have to get in 4 hours.
Yeah, I feel like that. Like poor Ross King, that I've written with him.
Yeah,
First couple times I wrote with him, I think there was this veil of like, and again, we haven't spoken about this, but I'm sure if he checks this out and he hears about this, he'll probably text me. But I feel like for him, he was worried that like, okay, this rookie guy is expecting me to help him write a great song. And I'm like, this guy's expecting me to have at least a little talent in songwriting. So it's like I'm overthinking, trying too hard, scared to even say an idea. And it like the first couple writes just did not go well to the point where I'm like, there's no way he's going to write with me again. So I started coming to him with ideas first instead of just, hey, let's write. And writing with him has been a lot better because I think the guard is down now. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We have no expectation other than we're both gonna like look forward to the next time we hang out.
Yeah. I think a lot of the great songwriters in town, Ross being one of them, has the heart of a teacher as well as a songwriter. So when they get surrounded by people they believe in, they're willing to take on the risk of writing with them because they want to help develop them and give them opportunity. So I've been in situations like that where like, I shouldn't be writing with this person, but they keep saying yes. And every time I write with them, I walk away something better. So I walk away a better songwriter in little ways. So it's little things that add up over those writes.
So let me ask you this: have you ever run into this? Because I have, and maybe it's not the norm, it's the rare. Have you ever run into times where maybe you started a song with someone or you even finished one and then maybe someone's going to cut it. Maybe you like, I know you don't do much of the artist thing anymore, but maybe hey, I want to cut this song, but it needs this. Have you ever run into a problem where you just can't get the other writer to really even open the song up and take a look at it?
Oh yeah.
Like, but now why do you think that happens?
It could be a few things. One's schedule.
Sure.
I think that's always the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Sometimes it's also probably they didn't have a good experience with that person writing, and they don't want to reopen it, or they don't believe enough in the song to reopen it.
Sure.
For whatever reason.
I got you.
You may believe in it, I may believe in it, but they go, I just don't see if there's anything there worth chasing.
Yeah.
And that's fair. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that because, unless at that point you could go a whole different routes. You could either let it go or just go, hey, I know you're not interested in it. Can I bring in someone else to help me finish this song? And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say they're probably going to be fine with that.
Yeah, no, and that's true, and that's what I have learned.
Yeah.
It's just, but and to be fair, actually, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm going, wait a minute, actually, I have bailed on a song on someone. They were like, hey, let's finish it, and I'm just like, it was basically, I felt like we rewrote a song that I had just literally recorded and put out.
Yeah,
and I'm kind of like, I don't see the point of, we basically rewrote the same thing. It wasn't feeling it, and thankfully though, later on, it's like, because he was hitting me up, hey man. And I'm just like, I just don't know how to tell him that. And it was, so now it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's right. I've had it done to me and I didn't like it and I did it too. Crap. But yeah, man. So now, how did you? Now I know you've told me the story, but I know obviously we're gonna have some listeners and whatnot.
Yeah.
How did you end up like getting into professionally songwriting and producing and all that stuff? Like, what? How did this go from? If I'm not mistaken, you were basically probably a worship leader at a church, and how did you go from doing that to now you're in Nashville writing with probably some of your heroes and recording and all that?
I'll try to give the quick version because it's a little bit of a long journey. It's a 20-year journey. I mean, I'm wrapping up 20 years in this thing this year. And I'm from Texas originally. That's where I was born and raised. And right out of college, my wife, we dated in college and got married right out of college, and I started working for a producer there in the Dallas area, and got him David Parker. And I took a risk one day. I had heard of David. He had produced some early Tomlin stuff, and like just
Yeah.
he had a reputation, and but he also traveled as a worship leader,
Mhm.
and so I really feel like that was what God was calling me to be a part of, is like, in the studio producing, songwriting, and then traveling as a worship leader. And so I just sent him an email one day, and I just said, "Hey, I know you do this, and this is kind of what I feel like the Lord's kind of leading me into. Um, would you be open to an intern?" Like, I wasn't even asking for a job. I was out. I just want to glean. Like, I just want to sit there and just soak in what you do.
Mm.
And he graciously said yes. And I spent about 6 months as an intern. And he brought me on staff as like a studio manager and engineer. And I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and then ended up starting my own studio.
Wow.
I kind of outgrew the position, as he put it,
Yeah.
early on. And he basically had the kind of wherewithal to sit me down one day, and I'm so grateful he did this, and tell me, "Look, I can't pay you what you're worth anymore, of what you know, your skills, and
Yeah.
just kind of where you're at." And he's like, he kind of kicked me out of the nest a little bit.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was very hard to take, and that was very scary, because
Yeah.
here we are, a young married couple, a couple years in, and money was not coming in,
Right.
as it was. And so,
Yeah.
but that was the best thing ever, because it pushed me to go out and start something on my
Yeah.
own.
Well, it's kind of like I think it was like a Tony Robbins thing I heard him talk about, like, if like the only way to take the island, you have to burn the ships, because
Mm,
if the two options are success or die,
yeah,
90% of the time you're going to have success,
right,
because you don't want to die.
right.
So in a sense, he burned your ship. He burned your ship
Yeah,
for
he
you.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah. So
powerful.
I started my own studio just out of my house, and was working there. So it was still in Dallas, and we did that for over a decade. And all the time I was traveling as a worship leader. So I was out on the road touring and doing mostly camps and conferences, weekend events, things like that. And that was, I mean,
Yeah.
that was full time, between traveling on the road and studio. And then, like I said, the quick version, fast forward to around 2014, and our friend Michael Farron gave me a shout one day. I've known Michael for
Wait, well, hold on, time out.
15 years. Yeah.
Farron called you.
Well, so that's funny you say that, because I always, so I love Farron, and he's told me, I've told him the story 1,000 times. Um, yeah, we were loading out of an event, in playing, and my phone rang. And like I said, I've known Farron for a long time. So
Mm.
my phone rang, and it said Michael Farron. I was like, "Guys, I gotta take this phone call."
Yeah.
And so, because I thought, if I don't take the phone call, he'll never call me back.
Yeah,
So
that might have been the last phone call he ever made. I mean, we have proof that there was one, people.
so he called me basically and was like, "Hey, I'd come out to Nashville a lot. Let me back up a little bit. I'd started coming out to Nashville a lot for some songwriting opportunities. Was mixing records out here with a couple of different mix guys. Stuff that I was producing in Dallas, I'd fly out here to mix the record. So I was kind of getting the lay of the land, and I was, I'd come to the very, very first Kingdom songs. It was called Hymnish back in the day.
Right, Himish. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I came to that, and so I'd starting to reconnect with Michael, other people that were a part of that. So he called me one day out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm looking at starting my own publishing company. Would you want to be a part of that?" And I was just like, I wasn't even looking for that,
Yeah.
and I was just writing songs for that. For the time, was writing songs for my ministry, for what I was doing. And Michael would hear them, and I'd send them to him, or he'd just hear them, whatever. And so he called, and I said, "Sure." I don't know what all that looks like. I was so green, had no idea what all that meant,
Right.
And so I said, "But I'm actually coming out to Nashville in 2 weeks. Maybe we can sit down and talk about it." And I said, he said, "Yeah, who you writing with?" And I said, "Well, I don't have anybody to write with yet. I was just now starting to figure that out." He goes, "Just get here, and you can stay with me, and I'll figure out some rights for you." And so I
Yeah.
had like 3 or 4 rights over the last couple of days, and then we kind of did a little deal there, which then kind of morphed into this deal with Integrity Music for a while. We did 3 years with that, and
Mm.
yeah, it's just kind of snowballed into this journey. And so now I'm also the worship pastor at Gateway Church in Franklin as well. So I do that in addition to production and songwriting. So yeah, we moved to Nashville in the fall of 16. So we're 5 years into this right now, and we've been here
Okay.
5 years. And
So to summarize, intern, kicked out, Farron calls Nashville.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I
know.
will say this about Nashville, because it's always the question of, should I move to Nashville? And I never know. And I always answer that question. I don't know. I can't answer that for you. Like, because my journey to Nashville looks way different than everybody else's journey to Nashville.
Yeah.
And that's not a fair comparison to give you. There's no formula to this.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yep.
So I always tell people that Nashville came calling on us. We didn't come calling on Nashville.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question for a lot of people is because I, you know, I've had people ask me all the time, like, oh, should I move to Nashville? And it's like, well, what's in Nashville that isn't where you
Right.
are? And and for me, like living on Long Island, New York, which is it's a very small place.
Yeah.
You know, for me anyway, it's like, okay, well, are people writing high quality songs here?
Yeah.
No, and I don't mean that to be mean to anybody. It's just not many real songwriters there. And anyone who is writing songs, they're really writing very dated stuff that just wouldn't work for what I wanted to do. It's like, can I find guys who wanna tour and travel and be pro musicians? No, check. So it's like, you know, not in New York. Yes, it's in Nashville. It's like, okay. And for me, moving to Nashville made all the sense in the world. I think the problem is a lot of people think, oh, I should move to Nashville because they think they're going to, quote, get discovered. It doesn't really, it's not how it works. It just doesn't. I mean, I know, there was a time when maybe that was a thing, but, you know, and I think a lot of those discovery stories are just glorified nonsense. It's like,
well, the discovery story is also, they don't know how much work's gone into that behind the scenes for decades before they're discovered.
Right. I mean, like I remember reading a story about Phil Wickham, how like apparently like, you know, someone who knows Bart Millard, you know, was like, you got to see this kid.
Yeah.
And it was not just that. I mean, poor Phil had been working his tail off, you know, and just at his craft for a long time, you know, worked with probably a lot of people. And then, yeah, sure. Like some of the right people, like, hey, I want to invest in that. That's awesome. But, you know, now also, you know, again, that's a guy who was in California. He didn't have to move to Nashville.
Right.
And, you know, I think California has, it's kind of not as well known to a lot of people, but California has a huge worship scene.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how people don't know that.
I mean, well, if you think about it, the history of Christian music, it you know, the Maranatha movement and, you know, the Calvary Chapel movement, all that stuff, I mean, that all started Costa Mesa, you know, right there. I mean, so, and that's where Phil's kind of interacting with.
Right.
So that's where he's at. So, you know, there's a pretty big heritage and legacy, like you said, of Jesus music. You know, the Jesus movement started out there. You know, that's kind of where it all began. So, I think there's, I mean, there's obviously hubs, right, all across the country of certain. There's the LA kind of pop scene. There's the New York scene, somewhat still, but you know, Nashville is going to have the country and the CCM and worship, you know, side of things here. So, you know, to me, you know, living in Dallas, you know, Dallas is a little bit of a micro hub of music as well. There's been a great kind of a center of Christian music there. It's come out of there, birthed out of there. Some of them have moved to Nashville now, but a lot of it's been birthed out of Texas. Texas is a big kind of producer of Christian music artists out there. But for me, kind of what you said, it's like I kind of felt like I hit a ceiling of, okay, I can't grow anymore as a producer and as an engineer and as a songwriter in this town. Nothing against those people at all. I love those people and I'm grateful for that. But if I was going to be challenged, then I had to move to a place where I'm the lowest in the totem pole in the room, so that I could grow as a producer. I can have relationships with guys, other producers who can throw me some work, which happened, and then they shred it to pieces, and they go, "This is you need to improve this."
Well, and you know, they say this like you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Sure.
So it's like, for what you're passionate about, are there people you could surround yourself with in your hometown that, you know, are going to push you to want to be better, want to elevate your level?
Yeah.
You know, and I use this like a sports analogy a lot. Like I tell people, like, I mean, I loved playing hockey, you know, and there was some kids 1 block over that, you know, I would want to go play with. And actually early on, they wouldn't let me play because it's just like, you know, I showed up with skates and couldn't. And they're like, yeah, sorry, man, you can't play with us. Oh, okay. So I worked hard, learned how to skate, and then eventually was like, you know, went and played with them and realized like, I probably shouldn't play hockey.
Yeah.
But then was like, no, I really want to be good at this. So I found another place to play where there were these guys, all these adults who were way better than most people. I mean, these guys were incredible. And I could not hold my own even a little bit. But I kept trying, kept hustling, kept trying to, hey, I see what he's doing. I want to mimic that. I see what he's doing. I'm going to mimic that. Before you know it, one day I decided, I wonder how the kids on the other block are doing. Let me go play. Like maybe like a year later, just go skating over. I was better than all of them. Because I was getting worked by people that were just, I had no business playing against. And it's like, oh, wow, and I learned at a young age, there's something to this. Go and be the worst one in the room so that eventually, you're just going to become a sum of what you're taking in. You may not be the best one in that room ever, but you might find yourself dovetailed in and then go to other arenas and you might be like, hey, it's kind of like I used to say in hockey, like you take a goon, the guy who's known for fighting. He's not a goal scorer. He's not considered great in the NHL. Put him on any ice with any other player, just average players. And he's Gretzky, and it's like, nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing. So it's like, that's something that I think is another big question people should ask themselves is, are there people around here I can surround myself with to grow? And in a lot of places in the country, like for me that, I felt like I kind of outgrew the circle that I was in. I mean, at that point it was like, well, I never sung before. Cool. I'll start hanging out with singers. Never really wrote, tried to be a band or do anything. Let me start hanging out with those guys. And then eventually you get to that point where it's like, well, I'm at the ceiling of knowledge. I want to know more. I want to do more.
Right.
And it's like, for me, I was that stage of life where it just made all the sense in the world. And, it was kind of, for some people, it was so fast. It was like, for us, it was, I mean, I don't know how fast your decision and to action was, but for me, it was like, hey, I think we should move to Nashville. Okay. And that was maybe like midsummer. And, my wife and I weren't even engaged yet. It was like, okay, so if we got engaged and got married, like her thing was, the only way I'm marrying you is if we move out of New York. I don't want to live here. And a lot of things kept me from wanting to do that. But long story short is I ended up feeling good about moving out of state. And so it's like we got engaged in August of 2014. We were married in June of 2015. And August 1st, we ended up we were in Nashville. It's like we got married, did the honeymoon, came home, flew to Nashville, found a place to rent, flew home. 2 weeks later, we drove up. It was just like that, and relatively quick. And the crazy thing about when your decision to action is, had there been any delay, we probably would have talked ourselves out of it in some way or whatever. Did you go through that? Was that like a quick process, or was it like a long?
Both and.
And
I'll tell you why. So, I mean, my aspirations was to move here for college. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Belmont University, and pursue that whole thing. Ended up going to Dallas Baptist University, met my now wife there. So I would say there was a delay there because I didn't end up in this town right when I wanted to. And I'd kind of written Nashville off, not in a bad way, of just going, after we graduated, I started working for David at the studio and just kind of started, my journey in Dallas, and, started having kids. And I'm like, okay, well, Nashville wasn't for us, and that's okay. I even was like, I have a marketing undergrad, and I was like, well, I'll go work for a label. We'll move to Nashville, I'll work for a label, and then I'll work my way into production, which is not how it works.
Nope.
So it's not how it works. But I was very naive at the time. But so, we had kids, started doing life there, and thought, we're not moving to Nashville. And then all these relationships started coming about from Nashville without me trying to like seek them. They just came about in opportunities. And here we are, in crossroads of, figuring out what our next steps is. This is 2015, and life in Dallas just kind of got the gears started grinding in different ways. Nothing was smooth in life in Dallas. It was great. We had great friends, a great church, great situation, but it just didn't feel right. So there's something about it that just felt right. Kind of the grace lifted, if you will, from that area. But at the same time, things started feeling more right out here. Like it just like the grace kind of transplanted. Relationships were flourishing, and opportunities were coming. That's why I say Nashville called on us. We didn't go calling on Nashville to try to make this work. Now, so that was, to give you a timeline, April of 2016 is when I went to Kara and I was like, I think we're supposed to move to Nashville. Little did I know that the Lord had already told her we're supposed to move to Nashville, but she was waiting on me to hear from the Lord on that.
Wow.
So
That's
and there's a lot more to that
yeah,
story,
no,
but
I bet.
and so we started. I had a summer's worth of dates, and I said, let's get through the summer. Obviously, we got to fulfill all these dates, and then let's move in the fall. And so our house went up on the market and
So were
sold.
you doing the artist thing, or was that like a worship kind of like a traveling worship?
Yeah, traveling worship leader. Yeah, like I said, did a lot of like camps and conferences and things like that. So
Okay.
I was more leading worship at these. I was like guest worship leader for these events.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so yeah, we put our house up on the market, sold in 24 hours, and we found a house out here over FaceTime and moved 4 weeks later after that. And you know, I say, opportunities were here, more relationships were here. Moved here with a lot of great relationships, a lot of potential opportunities, but had one record on my calendar in the next few months, and that was it. At the time, I was working for a producer, some here in town, doing some demo stuff, which kind of I equate my very first year here in Nashville to being kind of like a master's degree in production because of the guy that I was working for. He would give me a bunch of stuff. And then like I said, he would shred it in a good way, in a very humble way. It wasn't like, you suck. It was like, no, here's the bar. So I'll quickly learn the bar of Nashville production of things, everything from tuning vocals to pocketing things to just, production level.
And that's the thing. I wish more people like wanted it or understood that, you desperately need people in your life that are willing to tell you what could be better. And most people can't handle that. And like I will say, like, I grew up as a kid, nothing ever made my parents happy. Nothing. And in a way I'm grateful for it. I'm not grateful for all the therapy I have to go through to deal with some of that, but it's turned me into a person who, everything I do, I want to know, like, I want to take to somebody who has way more experience or is on a different level than me and go, what could I do better and different? Tell me. It's not gonna hurt my feelings. It's, and like, I've probably talked about Tom Brady a million times on this, but like, I love the Tom Brady approach is he's not going to sit down and watch film of all the good plays he made. He wants to know, I want to see the throws I missed. I want to see what adjustments I need to make.
Yeah.
Great. I did, okay, good. I got 3 touchdowns. Why didn't I get 6? Like, that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between criticism and constructive criticism.
1000%. Yeah.
So constructive criticism comes out of the heart of the teacher, a mentorship, someone like, I don't care that you messed up because I want to help you get better for the next time you do it. Criticism just is almost cowardly a little bit, because you give your opinion, but you give no other way for that person to grow.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's like, instead of being like, hey, the tuning on this isn't good. Instead of, hey, check this out. You hear how you did that tuning?
Yep.
So if you try this, this is going to help make that sound more natural. That's constructive criticism. And that's like, oh, cool. Teaching moment. Cool. And I agree with that. I mean, as I'll have friends I'll send a mix to who don't mix. They don't mix a project. And they want to give mix critiques. And it's like, I didn't ask you for that. It's like, hey, just want to know what you think of the song.
Right.
And it's like, that's just weird criticism. It's like, instead of, hey, I hear this, that plugin there, it sounds like they're using this. Hey, you should check this plugin. It might make that reverb sound different. That's constructive and cool, because I've learned about plugins. I've learned about some of that stuff. Not that I'm a producer in that regard, but like, I'm definitely a guy at this point where I can make a little demo.
Yeah.
And, at least kind of, I tell people, like, the way I can produce anything is like the equivalent of like holding up a shirt in front of you and going like that. It's good enough to get the idea, right? But that's how I can produce. But the way I actually produce anything, like my last couple singles I've quote produced, it's been more of like, I'm the guy who sits at the head of the chair and goes, yes, no, yes, sounds good. And it's like, I just pull a bunch of people around into the project, and I'm just sort of the head of making it all come together.
Yeah.
And
which is honestly part of what a producer's in the job title, if you will. They're, I say a producer wears many hats, from quality control to musical to artist therapy to all of that stuff. So I think a great producer knows how to surround themselves with great people.
Yeah. And to be honest, like, I get a lot of people who's, you hear advice like, don't ever produce your own stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I do. yes and no. It's like I'm at the head of it, but I got a guy. I go, hey man, come up with a track idea for this, and then he comes up with his idea that I didn't have,
Right.
and hey, it might be cool. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? And then we share it with someone else we know, and it's like it's a team effort. It definitely is, and there are people way better than me doing everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I go in, I work with a vocal producer, Chris Bevins.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, what do you got any melody ideas? You got any ideas? I'm open to it. And every time I come out, the way I was singing it walking in is not how I sing it walking out.
Sure.
Because of, Chris's ideas and, his amazing tuning. Sometimes I'm like, okay, who did you bring in to re-sing this? Because that doesn't sound like me. He's a magician. And it's like, it's bringing people into your project and going, yes to their ideas. Yes, your way. Because I hear about these. I mean, have you ever had this happen where, as a producer, because I hear stories all the time. Usually it's artists that aren't really on a high level who tell me things about how they get into fights with their producer. I had one guy tell me how he almost came to blows with his producer during recording vocals. And I'm just like, why? If he has you do it again, it's because it's not right. What are you mad about?
Yeah.
It's weird. Have you ever had that? Like where someone gets mad at you because you're like, hey, this isn't right. Is that a thing?
So let me give you a little back up. So yeah, I think it's a great question. I love it. I think, when a producer and an artist work together, this is why I tell people, like, if you want to be a producer, you should go major in psychology as well, because you're just going to deal with people. Because every artist's temperament is different, and as a producer, when an artist walks up into the room, especially on vocal day, they could have had the most horrible morning ever. It was just going to affect how they approach that vocal session. So I have to learn to read the room a little bit and kind of how do I coach this person on vocals based on their mood, not just their talent. Like I can't come in with guns blazing on someone that's very personality-wise very shy and very timid. I have to give a lot of encouragement and be authentic. I'm not faking it. I'm just saying, okay, this is what you're doing great. Here's how we can improve. You kind of have to white glove it to some degree. And then there's some guys who come in very brazen and just kind of like, and then it's like, then I get a little more salty with them, and kind of get in there. And I don't mind, and they can take it.
Yeah.
But you can't, there's no one shop approach to working with an artist because everybody's temperament is different. To answer your question, I can't remember an exact like vocal session that I've ever been like, we've gotten into blows. I've had conversations with artists on like mixes before of like they're hearing things and I'm going, I don't hear what you're talking about. Like I've listened on headphones and monitors and
I've been that artist 32 revisions later.
Good grief,
it's
brother.
Still there. I'm hearing something no one else hears.
So, and one time it meant we had to, pay a kill fee to a mix engineer and go with a different one because the artist wasn't loving it. Everybody else loved it, but her, you know? And anyway, so it's just one of those things. And at the end of the day, my job is to serve the artist. So, and I take that very seriously. Like I want every artist that I work with happy, but I want them to walk away stretched a little bit. Yeah. So
I think it's interesting because I'm a very self-analytical person, and I remember I said this to my wife the other day. I just came home from my vocal day. I have a single that I'm in the process of working on now, and I haven't been singing much over the last since COVID. It's just like my endurance is not what it was. Voice tired, everything, but. I came into it. I said to my wife, I go, I miss the nerves. Like I remember like, my first year, the first times in the studio was all nerves and like, just me having it in my head that like in the other room where the producer is, he's sitting here going like, oh, what did I get myself into? And whereas now it's just like, all right, I'm here to sing it. All right, let's get it done. Like, even I'm the one going, yeah, I know. Let's do it again. This time I'm going to get it on pitch and the timing right. No worries. Like it doesn't even faze me when I know I get it wrong. It's
right.
Like, or I forget the words. I don't even get mad anymore. And it's like, I kind of miss the nerves because that feeling when you get out of the studio is like, I did it. Now it's just kind of like,
What else do I have to do
What
today?
else I gotta do
Yeah.
today? Yeah, I kind of miss that. But like, I mean, does the nerves ever come back? Like, are these artists? I know you've worked with some artists who've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Do they ever get? Does that ever rush ever come back, or does it always just become business as
No,
usual?
it comes back. It comes back. You know, when you work with on something that you're really excited about and
Yeah.
you're really proud, whether it's a well-known artist or not, like
Yeah,
the the pressure's on, and probably self-inflicted pressure to make
sure.
sure it's the best it can be. And then when you hear the final product, or you hear the end result of that day after you've recorded the vocal and you've comped it and you've got it all
Yeah.
ready, and you're like, okay, this was worth every bit
See,
of the fight.
it's weird for me. The songs I've been excited about have they've done all right as far as an indie artist is concerned. They've done okay. The ones that I've just been like, "Ah, okay, I guess so. Other people are telling me to cut this, so I guess I'll cut it." Those have been the ones that hit. Those are the
Mm.
ones that everyone loves, and I'm just like, okay. Like my number one song is a song called "Keep Fighting."
Mm.
I didn't want to record that. I only recorded it because I showed a couple of people, and it actually like seemed to change them
Hmm.
as a result of hearing it. Like it changed their mind about something. Particularly my mom. My mom heard the demo because I just didn't know what else to say to her when she was diagnosed with cancer, and was
Mm.
like, I'm not going through chemo. I'm not doing all that. And I just didn't know what else to say. So I'm like, hey, want to hear a song I wrote recently? Let her hear it. And she was just moved to tears even, and was like, all right, I see what you did. All right. I'll go through treatment once. And it was like, whoa, this song changed my mom was not really a believer,
Hmm.
at least at the time. I'm like, this song has to come out, I guess, and we did that. And I remember coming out away from it like, okay. And then even now, like this single that we're working on, people on my team are all like, I got a call today from one of my guys. He's one of like 3 people who've even heard the song, and he's like, dude. And normally he's full of like maybe this. I don't really like this line. He's full of stuff. He's like, it's perfect.
Hmm.
He's like, don't touch a thing. I'm like, this song actually might be good. Because I'm like, ugh, whatever. It's kind of typical, I guess, right? But man, I think that's the challenging part, I guess, as an artist. Have you ever run into that as a producer where you're like, this song is fire, and the artist is like, nah, I don't know. And have you ever had to really wrestle them into, yes, this is right, and they put it out, and then they're like, glad I listened to you? Or has it ever been the other way around?
Okay, yeah, more of that
More of that?
probably.
Okay.
Because when I work with artists, before we ever talk logistics of how work with me is going to be, I was like, let's start with the song. Let's hear what you're writing, or let's write something, or let's just it's all about the right fit for me,
Okay.
and that would be for any producers, like, because like, yeah, I can hit the red button and I can make tracks and I can record your vocal, but that doesn't mean I'm the best person for this artist to do it
Yeah.
with. So there's a song, I'll give you specifics, and they know this. Church I'm working with in Dallas right now, Valley Creek Church, they sent me a song well over a year ago that it's a good song, and I thought, it's a good song. It's not a great song.
Yeah.
And we were at the time we were writing
Valley Creek, is that Jonathan Curtis Turner?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
For some reason, I thought he was with that church.
No, they're in Dallas, and he's in Louisiana. Anyway,
And he's amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
He's just awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Really, really solid songwriter.
Solid guy. But yeah, so they sent me the song, wasn't feeling it. And I wasn't feeling it because it was from a melody or lyric standpoint, but I just didn't connect with it. I didn't see the big picture. It had come out of a sermon series for their church, and it was really connected to their church, but I was just thinking, I don't know how this is going to translate outside of their 4 walls, And at the end of the day, they're writing for their church, and that's the goal. And so keeping that in mind, fast forward to just a few months ago when we actually recorded the record, it made the record. And after I sat with it, reworked it a little bit production-wise with them, and then the night of the recording, though, is what really convinced me, because I heard their people just engage and sing it. And I was like, I was wrong. Like, I have no problem admitting that I was wrong, that song wasn't going to be a good fit. The other side of the coin, I don't know so much, where I get excited about a song and they don't. Because at the end of the day, like, if they get excited about a song, then I'm in, like, because they have to be the one that carries it every night.
Yeah. See, I have a hard time sometimes. So sometimes I'll write songs with people who produce.
Yeah.
So, and I know a lot of times they're hoping, hey, we're going to write this song and like Tom's going to love it and he's going to pay me to produce it. So, and my problem is, again, being a New York guy, I have this wall of defense of everyone's got an angle, right? That's sort of just this predisposition I have with people. So it's like, we write this song and they're like, it's fire, man. Let's do this. And I'm kind of like, yeah, because you want me to pay you a lot of money. Hold up. Let me live with it a while, you know? And it's sometimes that's a sticking point for some people. Like, well, what do you mean want to live with it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and that's been a challenge for me sometimes, is where it's like, oh, well, I'm sorry you had that expectation. You should have made it very clear that, like, hey, if we're writing together, it's so I can produce for you, not, you know, try to amp me up, because I don't let people control my emotions. I'm a very hard guy to get me to, rah, because I'm not a follower like that. So it's like, if your game plan is to get artists in and write with them and then get them excited so that they pay you money.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the guy to do that. I'm the guy to go, hey man, I really want to work with you. So here's my proposal. Tell me how much you're going to want to charge me for the song. Tell me, what the process is going to look like. And if I feel comfortable with that, cool, let's chase a song to do that for.
Yeah.
But they try that coy approach of like, let's build something and get you excited about it, so it's kind of halfway there already. And it's like, I struggle with that in a big way.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's not your process at all. Your process is probably a lot more like what I just talked about.
Yeah.
It should be, right?
Yeah, because it's relational for me. It's not just transactional.
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference, and I think if more young producers could get that in their mindset of like, it's not just about you collecting a check because you hit the red button. It's about working with people that you really believe in. Like, and like I said, for me, that's why I switched over a few years ago versus like, hey, people send me an email going, hey, how much do you charge for production? I don't want to talk numbers yet. I want to just get to know you and your heart and like your visions, your goals. And then I want to hear what you're writing. Like, because if I don't resonate with any of that, then I'm going to be miserable collecting a check from you just to produce a song. And then we're not going to be friends afterwards. And that's more important to me, that we're friends afterwards.
And that's a hard thing. That's a hard lesson I had to learn, at least early on, was like, because if someone's listening to this and they've never recorded a project with anybody, especially if it's a long-term project, like I recorded an EP with two people over the course of 10 months. And I spent like at least 2 days a week for a while with these guys, writing songs, just being there for every step of the way. And for me, I'm like, man, I just gained two best friends. And, checks written, or the checks written, product delivered. I hardly talk to those guys anymore. And that was hard, because it's like, hey, why don't we get together next week? Yeah, man, sorry, we're busy. It's like, oh, okay. And it's like, for me, it was hard because it was a real relation. Hey, these are my boys. And it's like, oh no, this was business the entire time. And that was a big eye opener for me of like, okay, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is. That's interesting.
And I know that's what makes you different from most.
I appreciate that.
You want to maintain
I do
those friendships.
There's an artist I'd worked with last year, all through COVID. We did 3 songs together, and we spent a lot of time together working on these songs. But we spent a lot of our conversations not talking about music, but just trying to. She had a lot of questions about just ministry and just like, how do I do this? And that's why I've always said, this is an extension of ministry, not just industry. Like, I love having a kind of one foot in both worlds. As a worship pastor, I'm in local church ministry, and then I'm in the industry as a producer songwriter. But there's oftentimes those very much the lines blur, because I'm sharing a lot of knowledge that I've learned over the last 20 years with some of these younger guys and gals, and we still have that open relationship where they can text me or they can call.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Junkie TV, your best source for Kemper, Helix, and impulse response profiles. Check them out on YouTube, all social media at Tone Junkie TV. Also check them on the web store at tonejunkiestore.com. Use promo code Golly to get 50% off site-wide. That's right, 50% off site-wide, tonejunkiestore.com.
And when they have questions, they'll talk, because they didn't just see me as a producer who hit the red button. They saw someone as a mentor. That was what's poured into me early on when I started working in that studio. Was they were a mentor to me.
Yeah.
So it's all I've ever really known. You know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's evident too in the circle that you run. I mean, like again, you talked about Farron. Like, I mean, and I joked earlier because Farron has a reputation of being hard to pin down.
Yeah.
You know, and during the whole Kingdom Songs era, I had an issue I was going through with. It was just a really, really tough situation that I was dealing with, and just didn't know how to handle it one way or the other. And something just said, ask Michael if he'll take some time to talk with you, you know. And Michael actually, like, we put it on a calendar, and we met for breakfast, and, you know, we talked for a couple of hours, and you know, he spoke into that. He spoke into a lot of things for me, and he didn't have to do that, and it was no real benefit to himself. Sure. And it was just like, I mean, the whole time I'm kind of sitting there going like, this guy could be doing anything, and he's taking his time for me. Like, that meant the world to me, and I've gotten to share that with him recently, what that meant to me. And you know, and I know you're in that circle of guys with that kind of heart for, you know, for people that you know, that they work with on some capacity, and it's definitely special. And I kind of wish, because I've kind of seen different shades of Nashville, and I know there's different circles, you know, and I've seen what all of them are like, and I really like your guys' side of town, if you will, because it definitely seems like, you know, you continue to support everyone. I mean, even Jonathan Curtis Turner, I know you've produced for him, you've co-written with him, but he's even told me a few times of like, yeah, Clayton told me about this plugin, and yeah, Clayton taught me how to do this. Like, your name comes up with a lot of ex-Kingdom Songs people, of advice, things you've taught them that were probably of no real financial benefit to you. And that's like, that's inspiring. That makes me like want to, you know, I want to have that more, you know, with people. And I struggle with that in business a lot, though, is that I really want to try to maintain these lifelong friendships, and it's a lot harder than people think it is. You know, I mean, I bring people in who play in my band, and I've always tried to treat my band like a family you join, not a job you're part of. And, you know, it's tough because I have plenty of people that play for me for a while. You know, you tour, you laugh together, you cry together. Maybe you get into an argument once in a blue. My crew, thankfully, those very few and far between. But, you know, and then it's like, well, they stop playing for you, and it's just like it falls away, and it's hard. It's like, oh man, you know, and then it's like sometimes it's hard to rekindle that. Like, how do you approach that? It's like, it's been 3 years since I called him. I promised him we'd hang out again. Like, what? Oh man. It's definitely tough. And I think that there's evidence that you guys really, you guys work hard at what you do. And it certainly helps too, probably because you have a church.
I've always, you know, people have this stigma, you know, they just have this whatever of Nashville being a very competitive town. And I would say there's definitely pockets of competition. You know, we're all trying to do the same thing. Like, we're all trying to either produce records, write songs, or be an artist, like in all in between. But man, 5 years into this now, I kind of picked up that at least the circle that I run in is more about community than it is about competition.
Right.
Like I over a year ago, you know, my vocal mic went, I'll just give you an example. My vocal mic went on the fritz, like, and I had an artist coming from out of town the next day to spend 3 days with me doing vocals. And I had other options, but I didn't want to shortchange this artist just because, you know, to a B mic versus the A mic that I always use.
What do you normally use?
At the time was a Peluso 2251 Telefunken kind of clone. I don't have anymore, but anyway, so I called a friend of mine in another studio and producer in Franklin. I was like, hey, here's my situation. Can I borrow a mic? And it wasn't, he I mean, he could barely get the words. I could barely finish the sentence before he said yes.
Yeah, and some of these mics cost more than some people's
Oh,
car.
the one he gave me was was a lot better mic than what I had.
Mm.
He said, "Come down." He said, come down studio, pick out what you want. I'm not doing anything vocalized for whatever."
Yeah.
So I mean, just very gracious. We do the same thing. We run in the same circle. It's like, but it was not even a thought to him to like help me. And I've done the same thing.
It's funny. I
So.
just thought of what there's some producer on here listening going, you should have just used a 7B. Worked good for Michael Jackson.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. But they weren't listening to the track that I was working on. So,
so actually, I've always wondered that. Does a vocal mic make that big of a difference for a particular track?
Maybe not particular track, definitely particular singer.
Mm-hmm.
Particular part, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right answer for that.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way. I have my main vocal mic that I tend to use for everything that I do vocally. Because I bought it because it was a pretty universal mic for what I deem most singers, you know. Yeah, I don't know if that's I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, because I know, like, for live, I know there's different. I mean, I've used different mics over different points of my singing career, and it's interesting what a difference for, like, and even just knowing friends of mine who do different genres.
Yeah,
there's different mics I would hand them based on what they do or the style of music.
Yeah,
you're gonna do a lot of screaming, or
sure.
you're gonna do you'll be on these loud stages. Here's this kind of mic I'd recommend.
Mm-hmm.
I almost never recommend an SM58. But it's just one of those things where even myself, like, I've noticed a huge difference when I was at my absolute heaviest, I would sing into a KSM9, and it was great because my voice had a heaviness to it that would bring out some articulation that I guess my weight was just, all that extra fat in my face was just making my voice darker. It would brighten it. Well, I lost 100 pounds at the end of 2018 and going into 2019. I lost 100 pounds. My voice changed. And now that mic was too mid-rangey, and it was harsh to listen to. I mean, one of my guys videoed my sound. The guy who was doing sound for me videoed it, and he goes, "Dude, listen to this." He's like, "When you hit those certain notes, it's like accentuating." And he goes, I can pull it down, but it's like that mic, we used to just run it flat. And it's like, you need a different mic. And that was hard because that mic was amazing, the KSM9. Now I use the Studio Electronics. What is that? Gosh, I can't even remember now. The V7. That's what I use. I use that capsule now, and that's incredible for a dynamic mic, and it almost never feeds back. You can cup it if you want. Rappers are good. You cup the mic. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, live is a huge difference. So I always wondered, like, in the studio, if that's.
I think live's less forgiving than in studio. You scour YouTube, you're going to find a bunch of comparison videos of a $200 mic versus a $10,000 mic, and they're going to say there's no difference. I don't know if I subscribe to that. I've never A/B'd it, so I can't say, I agree or disagree, but
tinkering around with, the most of my vocal work that I've done is just demo stuff.
Yeah.
Like, one thing about me, and it's funny, anyone who writes songs with me always expects me to be the guy to, like, hey, I'll get and sing on the demo the day of the write. I don't do that. I'm like, nope, you sing it. But I don't sing. Oh, too bad. You got the guitar, you do it. I just don't sing with stuff I haven't, like, learned. It's just not my thing. But anyway, I have noticed at one point I was doing some vocal covers and having some fun with that just to learn, and I used an AT2020, and no matter what plugin I put on it, I was doing things, and it's just like, this doesn't sound good. Yeah. So someone recommended using it. Actually, I have the warm audio version of the U87, and it was like a $400 mic, but hook that up, sang the exact same parts in the exact same room, everything, start putting plugins on it, and it reacts differently. Yep. It's almost like those plugins are not accentuating the stuff that I don't hear when it's dry. And it's like, oh, there's a difference here. Yeah. This is and so that's where I think in the back end is where a crappy mic, not that the AT2020 is crappy, but compared to a U87 clone, it's kind of crappy.
I will say this, after years of doing this, the more money you sink in a mic doesn't necessarily mean it's a better mic.
Yeah.
But I've when you've heard and engineered a vintage U67 from Neumann that's
Yeah.
$10,000, you don't have to do much on the back end to get it to sound like a $10,000 mic.
Right.
Whereas, you know, this mic or whatever, you know, as a vocal mic for like, you know, you're gonna have to do a lot more work to make it sound like a $10,000 mic.
You know, and I think would you agree with this? Because like I'll listen to, I don't care what genre of music it is. You listen to a One Republic album, for instance, or you listen to, I mean, even a For King and Country record.
Yeah.
You know, and you listen to that right now, and I mean, a lot of times, I mean, as an independent artist, I mean, I feel like what I put out is pretty high quality. And it's just like side by side sonically, it's just not, it's like not even on the same level, no matter, even though I got a Dove Award winning producer who like maybe the vocals sound on point, but all that other stuff just quite doesn't. And someone had said to me, well, dude, he goes, almost everything you're hearing on those records is through some very expensive equipment that, you know, you get what you pay for. So, you know, if they're using, I mean, they're probably using $10,000 microphones. They're probably using like real cabs. They're probably using, just, you know, they're probably using a type of a compressor that's a lot more money than whereas what you're using is a compressor plug-in. And you know, maybe that's the difference. Would you agree with that? That's in some ways it's a lot of it's the equipment that's getting the sonic sound.
Probably plays partly into it. I also would say, and I'll come back to something on that, but let's also say, you know, the hands and players that touch the song are always going to play into that. I think what's crazy is that most of what you hear these days has been produced through a laptop and
it's in the box. Yeah.
It's all in the box.
Yeah.
It's more in the box than you know. Like for me during COVID lockdown time, like I moved everything home for a season, and I was just working on a card table with my laptop and my Apollo Twin. I've
seen your Instagram, and you work on a plane sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to sometimes.
Yeah.
But like what I learned like when I first started, like gear for me was like credibility.
Yeah, I mean that's anything.
Know,
yeah.
And so I was like, the more gear I have, the more serious I'll be taken. And then over the last couple of years, especially, because I just like last year remodeled my studio, and I was like, I'm getting rid of stuff. Like if I hadn't turned it on in the rack in the last 6 months, it's gone. Like, and so I built a desk. A buddy of mine and I built a desk. It literally it's like 9 rack spaces in it, and I have just what I need.
Yeah,
I have, and the way I even patched it in, I'm like, this is my vocal chain, this is my guitar chain, this is my acoustic chain, and it's all pre-patched. Anyway, that being said, I learned that gear plays a part into it, but I've also flown out to a lot of artists this year, the past couple of years, to cut vocals. I'll build a track here in Nashville, and I'll fly out to go cut a vocal, and I'm literally bringing my mic, my laptop, and my interface, and I'm capturing it there, and I don't hear a lot of difference between my room and what I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah, I get that, and I mean, again, again, I've heard only a few people kind of say that's the difference, and you know, in some ways I could see that, and in other ways, again, it's like, well, okay, maybe on that song they got Ted T, working on it,
and I would say mixing and mastering is a big part of it.
It's
too.
huge, yeah.
You know, when a $400 mix versus $1,000 mix.
Yeah,
because the $1,000 mix guy is A-list. Like you're paying that because of he's cranking out some amazing mixes, and even the mastering side of things. Like mastering makes or breaks the whole record for me sometimes. Like I can have a great mix, but mastering can ruin that mix in a heartbeat. And so that's why I try to work with guys that have proven themselves. Not just because they do label work. Just because you label work doesn't mean you're proving yourself. But sonically, it's amazing. It's
amazing to me how often you see, and we see a lot of the same threads on Facebook, where it's like, hey, I'm looking for someone to master, and some of the people they throw out are like, that's not a mastering house. Like that's not, like I would rather hire a guy like a Dan Scheich or like I use Voyager mastering a lot, and I've used I'm trying to think. It was the Hit Lab, Nathan Dantzler.
Yep.
Like these are guys. That's what they do.
Yep.
They master.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just they don't just have Ozone 9 and that's what they
Right.
do.
Yeah.
They have. I mean, and I remember. I can't remember the place, but my first EP, I went to this place and the guy's like, "Hey, you want to come hang out while we master it? It's cool." And he had this huge screen and multiple different speakers, and the process was incredible. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, and the difference between what came in and what came out was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
It's special, and it's a process that's well worth the money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I have to be careful when I say this, but I think you have to be careful as artists sometimes to work with people that do it all, you know? And so, who produce, who mix, who master, that's part, if that works for you, great. Like, you know, but for me, I've just learned to find my lane and to surround myself with people who do it way better than me. So 9.5 times out of 10, I'm not mixing anything that I produce.
Yeah.
I'm farming it out to a true mix engineer. That's what they do every single day.
Yeah.
I've never mastered anything that I've ever produced because that's a whole nother science, literally a science behind mastering, like frequencies and it's just, could I learn it? Sure. But there's a lot better people who are already way ahead of the game in that than I can. Yeah. And I'd rather pay them $150 to $200 a song than me sit there and try to figure out how to do it myself. And take, they've already put in the 10,000 hours, if you will. Yeah. So I've learned to I love mixing. So I love to mix. I love mixing outside people's stuff. Like I have artists all the time that send me stuff to mix, and it's refreshing because I just get to kind of hear the song for the first time. Yeah. But I've just learned to find my lane, stay in that lane, and bring people into the team to help make it the best. And at the end of the day, it makes a way better product than I probably could have brought by myself. Yeah. Now, in the mix, and it's interesting because just like mastering can make or break a song, so can mixing. I mean, I had a tough situation. I never experienced it before, so I was like I hit about 3 industry friends of like, what do you suggest I do here? Because I don't want to lose a friend. I don't want to lose a contact. But what happened was we had it was a single I could have put out called Making Moves. And we had a very particular sonic vibe in mind for it. It was very poppy. We had this very like, I don't know, this almost like a fun, like we kind of wanted like a Bruno Mars-ish kind of, like real low end, bassy, make it way more of a pop tune, even though it had guitars in it. And it was like, okay, cool. So I gave someone a chance who I've never worked with before and who I've heard they do a great job mixing. Yeah. But mix 1 was not even in the wheelhouse of what we were thinking. They mixed it more like, oh, cool, it's a rock song. And it's like, oh no. And I know from experience that like if mix 1 isn't even remotely close, you gotta bail. You have to, because this is gonna be, we're gonna be mix 45. Yeah. And it was like, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. So it was like, okay, got some advice and reached out. Hey, I don't think we're where we wanted to be. Your vision's cool, but it's not quite what we wanted. So what do I owe you? And I'm gonna move on. And it was like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, no, listen, I spent X amount of hours. If we could pay me this little bit, like, cool. And we're still boys. Yeah. Like, oh, good. But that was scary for me. Sure. And then mix 1 from the person I went with comes back, and it's like, there we are. Yeah. Mix 3 was final mix. Yeah. Which some mixers might be like, 3 revisions, that's it? Like, I mean, he got the vibe. He understood. Yeah. And also he had familiarity with Latin music. And we had a lot of that little flavor in this, believe it or not, which is strange. Like, when I first heard the track from my guy who had the idea, I'm like, I can't do this. And he's like, yes, you can. Trust me. Okay. And it's fun because when we've played it live, it's like the crowd loves it. They just get into it. I mean, we played it acoustic and the kids are like, yeah. It's like, okay. All right. I don't know what I'm doing because I didn't want the song to sound anything like this, but I trusted the guys that were around me that said, yes, let's do this. And it works. And it's one of my most fun songs to play live. That's amazing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So, man, you do all this writing, you do all this producing, you do all this stuff that for a lot of people, that's fun. It's a fun hobby. What do you do? What do you do when you're not doing that stuff? Yeah, great question. Well, I'm a dad of 5 kids, so that's not fun. Come on. Well, it's not. Well, sometimes it's fun. I'm just kidding. Yeah, baseball season's fun. We're a big baseball family, so we love baseball. See, I have an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old, so now I'm like,
Oh, now my kids are my enemies now because they know everything. You
Well,
know?
I have all
Yeah.
teenagers and then a little girl. So
All right. So
I have an 18-year-old as well.
she redeems the dad mode still.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
you know, it's
Yeah.
like, I know what I'm talking about.
18 down to
Yeah.
13 and 3 now.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and then the little one's like, Daddies, you're my hero. See? They're my favorite.
That's right. Yeah, that's actually, it's a great question. About a year ago, I was like, I don't have a hobby. Like, I need something to like, other than just like, I want to sit on my couch and space out for a minute. You know, that was a hobby.
Yeah.
But I get really over the last year, well, kind of leading up to the last year, but especially last year, smoking meat has been my hobby.
Okay.
Barbecue. Love. Got a Traeger about a year ago, and which is pellet grill. And being from Texas, like beef is king, so we eat beef all the time. So briskets, it's very therapeutic for me, believe it or not, like to sit there and to season a piece of meat and put it on a grill and like see it from start to completion. And then the most satisfying thing is obviously when I get to serve it, whether it's to my family or friends or whatever, and just get their reaction, like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah,
you know?
that's probably the best part of cooking is when you make something and everyone enjoys it. Yeah.
Everybody enjoys it. So, yeah, that's kind of the goal next year for me about hobbies is I'm trying to simplify a little bit and learn the art of delegation, you know, things like that, and really get back to some of the things in my lane that I'm most passionate about. Every job has things you don't love doing, but at the same time, I wanted to be doing things that I'm passionate about. And hopefully that begins, at least in my head, it opens up some time that I can get back into golf. I love golf. Played yesterday for the first time in 5 years. And I was like, I miss this. Like, I'm gotta get back on the course. So
yeah, see, as a kid for me, like, you know, I used to fish a lot.
yeah.
You know, fishing was like
Love
life,
fishing.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where, but my problem is in my life, everything I love doing, I end up going and doing it, and at least try to do it professionally.
Right.
You know, and
You don't know where the line is.
yeah, it's like, you know, I loved fishing. So it's like, cool. Once I was old enough, I got a job on a fishing boat as a deckhand, you know, and I loved that. But and it became work, you know, and then my dad passed away. It was hard to go fishing because I never realized how, even when I go fishing alone, I was fishing with my dad. And then, you know, or, you know, one of my favorite things as a kid, I go fishing alone, come home, tell my dad about like where I found the fish or tell him something. And it was like, it was our common ground, it was our thing.
Yeah.
And when my dad wasn't around anymore, it was just really, it was difficult to do. It just, something didn't feel the same anymore.
Yeah.
Living and then coming from the East Coast, saltwater fishing, it just, freshwater fishing just pales in comparison.
Yeah.
It just, there's something wild and unruly about the sea that isn't in a lake. You know, and I always feel the presence of God on the beach, man. It's just something special about it. But you know, so for me, it's like, that's what happens. Everything I do for fun somehow ends up becoming something I try to monetize.
Sure.
And, you know, it's funny what you said that about the hobby. A close friend of mine, you know, I was just kind of venting to him about like just how I'm feeling about some stuff. And he's like, dude, what do you do for fun? I'm like, I work, I make money. You know, I don't know. He's like, what do you collect? I'm like, money, you know, like that's all I do. Like, wow, you're right. He's like, dude, you need to start, like, you need to find something that you do just because you like it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy like who, when he could tell I'm kind of stressed, he'll be like, hey, when's the last time you've been to the gun range? It's like, and for me, it's like, well, yeah, it's fun, but like, to me, the gun range was about like, okay, cool. Like if I'm going to own a gun, I want to make sure I master it because that's how I feel. I feel like you have a responsibility to master, you know, such a tool.
Yeah.
You know, and most people don't take that approach. I did. And while it's fun, it still feels like work.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I have I have drills I do. I make sure that I want to do this stuff proficiently because if ever, and I hope it never happens, but if I'm ever in a situation where I need to use these tools, again, I want to do it correctly and well and safely.
Yeah.
At least for people who
Absolutely.
aren't trying to hurt me.
Right.
Or my family. So it's just one of those things where it's a challenge when I think we're cut from the cloth that I think you have to be a artist, producer, songwriter, is, you know, you're trying to essentially your what were your hobbies at one point in your life are now monetized. It seems to be this mode that you do.
Yep.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. Like during the summer, I decided, hey, you know what I'm gonna do for fun? I'm gonna start going to garage sales and looking for cool stuff.
Yeah.
You know, looking for vintage stuff to collect. Here I am 5 months later, and I have a whole operation in my garage for reselling.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wait, I did it again.
Yep.
I turned a hobby into a business again.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my kids are reselling now. My wife's reselling. Like, oh, I just can't. I gotta figure something out. You know, and it's harder than people think. You know, that's why I ask everybody that I talk to, like, what do you do for fun? And it's a genuine, pretty common thing where most people struggle to find that.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's
why
right.
do you think that is?
I think most people who do what we do are so entrepreneurial driven, they don't know how to draw the line between what has to be part of the bottom line of making money for my family and what can just be, I'm willing to lose a little money on that because I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think that's just hard. And I think people just discipline. I think that's part of it too. Like, you've got to discipline yourself to take a day off. Like, that's what I did yesterday. I just took a day off just to go play golf. Like, I need to get, I was gone in Texas for 10 days last week working on a record. And I was like coming home and I hit the ground running. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I got to because I can't be at my best creative unless I just take a minute and be out from that creative space.
See, it's hard for me because I can't even go to concerts anymore because, you know, it's like I know too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I was at a winter jam once, and again, I'm not blaming anybody but the building, but that building is so terrible for music that it's hard to listen to because it's just like, oh, this. I felt terrible for the sound guy because in that room there's nothing to get it done, and it's hard to sonically enjoy it. Also, knowing what I know, like know, I had Tom Jackson in here talking about moments, and it's like, oh, I see what they did there. That wasn't real spontaneity. That was a planned moment. Like, I can't. It's almost like watching a magician and being like, oh, I know how he does that trick. It's not as wow. So that experience is lost on me.
Yeah.
So I don't enjoy going to concerts anymore for that reason. My wife still does and she's told me many a times, don't tell me about stuff. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
You know, and I have a hard time with that. And
it's the same for listening to music for me. Cause like when you listen to music all day long, you make music, you create tracks. Like, it's hard not to just listen to music and feel the emotion of music because all you're wanting to do is analyze the music.
Yeah.
Like, I want to analyze a mix. I want to analyze the chord progression.
You know, that's why I will say what I've done for me to help that is I made a playlist of songs from like the time I was a kid to now, of songs that just, I know I love those songs, and they do, no matter what, they trigger something, nostalgia, a moment, a memory. And because so that I have that playlist for that reason, is that gets me out of that mindset. Like, I mean, you know, I think most people our age, I don't know if you even listened to this genre even a little bit back. I mean, we're around the same age, I think. I mean, I'm only 27.
Yeah, 26.
But you know, when In the End by Linkin Park came out, like, that was like every like 17, 18, 19-year-old anthem. Like, that's everything. Like, you know, this is our message to our parents.
Right.
Like, you know, so everyone just, like, for me, even to this day, that song comes on. I don't care who you are. If you were our age during when that song came out, that song just does something for you.
Yeah.
It brings back memories, whatever. And there's lots of songs like that. So I've learned to have, okay, those are my songs. Yeah. That I'll, you know, get me out of, because I'm not going to sit here and analyze that mix. It's perfect.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I do that, but then all of a sudden my brain just crosses into producer world and go, how'd they get that? Or how they, why? Like, or just go, or be kind of in wonder of like, man, that snare sounds amazing.
You know, what's happened to me too? Now that you mention it, that happened recently where I'm like, hey, I think they used the same guitar tone on that song on this record.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no.
So I have to stop myself and just enjoy music. I remember a while back, I just sat down, and you're gonna laugh, but I love Peter Cetera's voice. Like, you know, Peter Cetera from Chicago. So I just listened to like 3 songs on headphones, just closing my eyes, just listening to talent be talent, and just not trying to analyze a mix or production, but just the song, let the song speak. Because I think as a producer, you kind of give up that right to just enjoy music a little bit because you're helping create enjoyment for other people.
Yeah, it's crazy. People don't realize this either. How often, like, you know, pro musicians, touring musicians, whatever, don't listen to music on the road. I mean, so many times. Actually, we just did a weekend run. You know, we drove up on I think on a Saturday. We played the show, drove home Sunday, and we didn't even listen to one song. We listened to podcasts. We listened to stand-up comedians. I mean, it's just. And just that's what we listen to that.
That's very true. I tell people, like, what do you listen to all the time? I'm like, I listen to music because I want to stay in touch with what's current. But 9 times out of 10 on a drive into the studio every morning, I'm listening to a podcast, whether it's a industry podcast or a sermon, because I follow a couple of pastors, and because I'm about to go listen to music for like 8 to 10 hours straight.
Yeah,
I'm like, I need a brain break. You know, I just need to zone out on my drive and then get into creative world. Versus, like, if I listen to music, I'm going to be listening to it, but I'm also going to be critiquing it and analyzing it, and kind of just subconsciously doing that. You know.
So if you weren't involved in music in any capacity, what would, like, let's say it was illegal to do music, can't do it, it's gone forever, and you know you were like stripped of all your abilities to do it, what would you do?
Oh man,
what would you work at a bank?
At this point in my life, I probably would. I've always threatened to open up a restaurant.
Yeah,
that's probably not the best thing to do sometimes, just because it's a lot of work and takes a lot of money. But I mean, I do love the barbecue life. I love doing that. I've always said I'd be a lawyer, but I don't know if I could. I don't think I'm aggressive enough for that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I've actually never really thought about that.
That's probably why you're a successful.
I mean, there's been no plan B once I moved to Nashville, so it was like, whatever it takes, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's interesting because, like, I mean, I came here with no plan B either, and you know, just for me, the longer I go, I'm like, okay, cool. I moved here in my 30s. I'm out now in the beginning of my 40s, and you know, I'm living the dream, and the dream's not as big as I wanted it to be, but I'm still getting to do this.
Yeah.
People are booking me. I'm getting to play these things. So this is working in some capacity. And it's like, so it's interesting because post-COVID, and I sat down with a good friend of mine, JJ Weeks, and like, we both talked about it. Like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And he's like, dude, I've been going through the same thing. We're talking about it. And then we both kind of came to both agree on this. We came to a realization of like, no, this is a great opportunity to do, to expand what we do, not just continue, okay, pick it up where we left off. It's expand into something, doing bigger things as part of what you do. And I realized that, like for me, doing this podcast and it's gonna, a lot of the skill set it takes to do this is actually great for other content creation and other things like that. But you know, it's really interesting to find myself in that kind of, you know, that kind of area of realizing like, wow, I can do some of these other things. But, you know, I would say that as far as for me, it's weird because if people have asked me all the time, if you couldn't do music, what would you do? And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I do something.
Yeah.
You know, and I've thought about the same thing. The whole, man, I could maybe open up a restaurant. But the interesting thing I find is almost every musician I know can cook. Why is that?
I don't know.
I mean, I have theories, probably because, you know, we know that with music, how to mix certain ingredients just enough to make it good. So maybe, you know, food is similar.
I think we're all just faking it and, you know,
probably
just trying to make it happen. I will say, I did think about this. I do love teaching. I think I would love to go teach. And that's actually something on the bucket list kind of later on in life a little bit, just to go back to, I mean, I got my master's degree a couple of years ago, so that I could maybe go back to university level and teach undergrad something, whether it's recording or whether it's worship leadership. You know, I love all those things, and I've had opportunities to teach already at that level, and it scratches an itch that I think I've maybe
Yeah, I
God's
mean,
prepped me for.
I've sat in on one or two of at the Kingdom Songs
Yeah.
where you taught stuff, and it was always really good, and it was just always really informative and
Sure.
solid.
Well, thank you.
Even when I, even with me heckling once in a while.
I will say this. I think most everybody I know that's moved to Nashville. Well, let me say this. For me, the things that we moved to Nashville for, there's some core things that are still the same, but the people that we moved here with and for, and not kind of our tribe has evolved. Someone say I don't hang out with the same people that I did, 5 years ago. I may see them every now and then, but they're not my everyday people. And I'm not
Yeah.
nothing bad happened. It's just life happens, and different people get pulled in different directions. Some of the I didn't move to Nashville to be a worship pastor at Gateway Church in Franklin. Like that was
Yeah.
not on the radar at all. I moved here to do production and writing, but part of my DNA makeup and part of my calling on my life is worship. And I didn't go apply for a job. It just kind of opened up, and it's just like it made sense to walk through that door. And, here we are. So I'm also learning this though, is that, we moved here 5 years ago, like I said, and at that time, the move was about me because of what I felt like God was pushing me into for career and,
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm seeing now, 5 years from now, and the older my kids get, that he moved us here for other reasons that's involving them now, or involving our family. So
Yeah.
if we hadn't moved here 5 years ago, we wouldn't have found our daughter that we adopted 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because she was born here in Nashville. So that would have never happened. But
Yeah.
we would have never probably moved out of here if I didn't have another reason to be out here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and then like my oldest son, he's getting into lighting design world for live shows, and he's 18, about to graduate, and he's
Wow.
getting some opportunities with that. And so what a better hub to be in than Nashville for that, Or like my second oldest loves the farm life. We don't live on a farm, but we've connected with farmers around our areas, and he's out there driving tractors and baling
Wow.
hay and like working on all these big, and he loves it. He's 17 years. He wouldn't get that opportunity in Metroplex Dallas, So it's like,
Hold on. So you have a teenager who likes hard work.
oh, all my boys love hard work.
That's one that's very Texas and very amazing.
Well, they have
I
a
like
good mom
that.
who
Yeah.
pushes them. So, I mean, I push them too.
Yeah.
They know hard work in the church. They love serving in the church, and they know hard work just to earn $1. And I think it's just ingrained in them. So,
Yeah.
very grateful for that.
I mean, I've noticed a tendency with a lot of young people to give up very easily.
Yeah.
It's too hard. I
Yeah.
can't do that. And it's like, it's almost super frustrating
Yeah.
to see. I mean, even in my own kids, I struggle with that. Like, and it's like they see me tirelessly working all the time. And a lot of times it's like, and I'm seeing this 18-year-old, like, it's like, what are you doing today? I have work. What time? 5 o'clock. So what are you going to do from 11 till 4? Get ready for work. What? It's really weird. I'm like, you could do something for 6 hours to make money. Figure it out. Get in a second job. What do you mean? But I have work. Like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just the generation. It's just the way that they're just, a lot of kids are approaching the world, but it's so not what I was, the cloth I was cut from.
Yeah.
It's like, time is money, and money is freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know for me it was like I couldn't wait to be able to live on my own, and so you had to get to work. You had to start figuring that out. You know? And I feel like watching even a lot of families that I know, and it's like they're kind of going through the same thing. Like, why aren't these kids motivated?
Yeah.
So you have some diamonds in the rough there, my man.
Thank you. They're good kids.
So you have some adopted children.
I have one. Yeah.
Okay.
Little girl.
You have one. So now what's it like? Because I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think I've ever had that heart of like, I mean, to be fair, I always want to help people out when someone's in trouble, or like, man, I really want to help, but like for right now, that's more of like where I would see myself, but that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if God puts something on my heart, it's going to be a way different thing. So was that something you've always had a heart for? Did something just change where you're like, hey, we need to do this? Like, what's that like?
So when Kara and I met, we met in the fall of '96 in college, and started dating about a year after that. And as we got more and more serious with our relationship, that was something we actually both brought up, like how we would love, you know, we were already talking marriage, and like, you know, we would adoptions on our heart. And at the time we thought, you know, we'd love to adopt overseas, you know, and pursue that. We, you know, we definitely want to have our own children, but at the same time we'd love to like be part of the bigger story of adoption. And so, you know, so then we got married 2001 and we literally popped out 4 kids in 5 years. So it was like, okay, we both kind of looked at each other like, maybe adoption still a part of the Clayton story, you know, moving forward. And so for a long time, we just didn't even really talk about it, but there was always this little yearning in us of like, but that's still part of what we would do. Like at our house, you know, at our house in Dallas before we moved here, we had a spare bedroom that we called the sister's room because we just knew that we were supposed to adopt. We just didn't know when. So, you know, the quick story of Cambry is, you know, we were going to start the adoption process in Dallas. We were going to do the foster to adopt kind of route and started some training with the state, then literally got a few months into that and then moved to Nashville, and all that training gets thrown out the window because it's all state-based.
Oh, wow.
So
it doesn't transfer?
Doesn't transfer.
Oh.
And so we moved here. We had to establish a year and a half of residency before we could even start it again. So we kind of had to back burner it again. And we ended up getting a phone call from a friend of ours one day about Cambry, and she was born in right here in Franklin. And long story short, we said yes to her, and God just kind of threw her in our lap. Literally, like one day, got a phone call, and it changed our world, and took her home a week old.
I know a lot of people are afraid of like overseas adoptions and whatnot because, you know, you always hear the stories, special needs, and other issues like that. Is that sort of like for lack of a better word, like, is that a luck of the draw kind of thing, or?
I'm not versed enough in the overseas because we spent so much time. I mean, I say time, we didn't spend a whole time, but just God kind of put it in our heart through a series of conversations and relationships to kind of focus more domestically. Like there's so many people, so many kids in our backyard that need a home.
Oh, so it was the domestic adoption.
Yeah. Cambry was born here in Nashville. Okay. Yeah. But you know, have plenty of friends who have adopted overseas. And I know you can be very specific to say you don't want a child with these disabilities or whatever. But then I know some that I know a pastor friend of mine in Dallas who was like, they've adopted 2 or 3 maybe. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to go down that road. So yeah, Cambry was an adoption here in Nashville. She was born in Franklin. So
okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there ever any fear of like, I mean, and again, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but is there ever a fear? Again, I don't know the circumstances in which this child was up for adoption.
Sure.
But is there ever a fear that, you know, at some juncture, you're going to have a parent trying to get their kid back or try to be meddle in their lives? Because, I mean, I have heard stories of things like that where it's actually gotten dangerous at some point. Is that ever like a concern or a fear? I know it's a possibility, but is that ever a concern or a fear for you?
Never been a fear.
Never.
I would say probably in the early stages of that, that crosses your mind.
Sure.
You know, but it's never been a fear. And you know, we would be here another hour if I told you the whole story, and you would understand why I say it's never a fear. But it's never been a fear because how God just kind of orchestrated their relationships and the situation in which she came about to us. And so we actually have a great relationship, you know, not a relationship in terms of like everyday talking, you know, whatever, but through social media, you know, we were able to see the family that she was born from.
Oh, that's great.
And so it's nothing but hearts and thumbs up all the time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it's a great relationship.
Oh, that's good.
And there's never been a fear of like, you know, something weird's gonna happen.
Because I always wonder, like when you hear about stories of that kind of that nature of like, you know, oh, some grandparents found out that didn't know, and there's this fighting going on. There's always this, like for me, I look at it, maybe I've seen too many TV shows and movies of like, you know, later in life being like, you kept me from those people, like, and you know, that's an irrational thought essentially, because for a lot of reasons, because you just, you know, a lot of times the kid has been kept from a lot of circumstances for good reason.
Yep.
So that could be certainly a challenge. But now, so you have 4 kids of your own and 1 adopted. Okay. Now, for you, is there, I mean, is there ever like I don't want to say is the love ever different, because the love comes from the same place, you know, but is it ever a different approach for better or for worse sometimes? Because is there ever a feeling that's different, or a way you handle, maybe a way you like, you know, for instance, like I know that there was a time in my life where I was, that my daughters had an older sister. She passed away when she was 18, but you know, I was part of raising that kid, and you know, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, there was ways I approached situations with her as a stepchild, as sort of a step parent, versus my real kids.
Yeah.
I was maybe a little gentler with certain situations, or you know, or in some ways just had a different approach, because it just didn't feel like, well, maybe I need to approach this differently. You know, is that a thing for you, or is the approach the exact same?
That's a common question that's asked about adoptions. Like, how do you love someone that didn't come from your bloodline? You know, it's like,
well, that's loving someone's easy. That's the easy part. It's the parenting.
The short answer is I don't feel a difference. Yeah. And now there's a difference in parenting a girl and parenting a boy in terms of like, and I've learned that the hard way of like, you know, the way that she wears her feelings on her sleeves, and a boy will, you know, when I instruct her or parent her, it's like drama, you know, emotion just comes over her at the word no. And I would tell my boys no, and they'd kind of laugh at me, you know. So it's like there's the female male difference.
That's why I'm glad I don't have a son. People always ask me, "Do you wish you had sons?" No, as I'd probably choke them, you know.
So I don't think there's been a parenting difference. There's obviously an age difference in parenting, because she's 3 and I have an 18-year-old. So it's like, you know, you got to parent them different. But there's never been a thought of like, I got to treat you differently because you're not biological.
Yeah, I mean, and I can totally see that. I mean, I will admit, I feel like with my kids, like my two actual like full blood kids, you know, I still parent both of them very differently, and part of it's their age, and part of it's their personality. One, you know, my 12-year-old is actually like a female 12-year-old version of me. And, you know, I say that partly is funny, because, you know, the way she can act sometimes is exactly like me. But it's like, I've discovered her thought processes, for the good and bad ones, where I'm like, I understand this kid probably better than anyone else can, because I totally understand. So I've treated her so differently in situations, things she's done wrong that were identical to how my 18-year-old did it. It's like, well, she, you know, the 18-year-old responded to, when she was that age, responded differently than I know this one's going to. So I have to approach them different. You know, like my oldest, man, if I yelled about something, it changed the behavior. My little one, if I yell about it, actually will make it worse. Yeah,
no, that's true. Yeah, I think you have to find their bents. On how to best get across to them, because that's the truth with my sons. Like my oldest son, we can talk to him and instruct him, parent him one way, but that's not going to work with number 2. Right. It's not going to work with number 3. So you got to find what gets to the heart of the matter, and what tactic, for lack of a better word, gets their attention.
Yeah, like my oldest, man, if I punished her, like if I took something away, man, it was like, never have to worry about that again. Yeah. But 12-year-old, man, like punishment never been the answer. And my wife's still kind of like, why aren't we punishing her for that? It's like, because I sat down, I had a long talk with her, and, you know, I just expressed how hurt I was that she did that thing, and that changed the game. She's just like, you know, I showed her how I was hurt by that, and that changed it. Not taking away things, because that somehow manifests itself into her feeling. If for some reason it's like she talks herself into like she deserved the punishment, and then feels worse about herself. And then we've discovered a lot of the things she'll do that are wrong are almost her kind of subconsciously punishing herself, because she knows she's going to get caught. And it's like, nope. So once we turned it around, reminding her, hey, listen, you're really valuable to me, and you're above this. For you to act like this isn't who you are. And those conversations have been game changers. And, you know, again, my wife and I both come from households where, it was fire and brimstone when you
Yep.
did stuff wrong. And again, knowing my child is a lot like I was, it's like, that didn't really change it. It just made me better at not getting caught. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, my dad's probably going to check that. So let me, it's like, it never made me go, I better never do that again.
Right.
It just didn't. In some cases, it was just like, well, I mean, he's just going to act the same way every time, no matter what. So why try? It's like, that didn't work. So,
Yeah.
but man, so tell me this, man, what do you got going on? What's next for you?
Yeah.
What do you want people to know?
Yeah. Wow. Finishing out the year. I'm in the middle of a live record with a church right now. So from a studio side of things, that's very busy at the moment. It's a record we've been writing for and producing for almost a year. So it's been a long process. And so that'll be the rest of the year for me, just kind of finishing that up. And I'm really excited about it. So that's what makes it fun. It makes it worth getting up every day to work on it. So then next year, who knows? Just keep going. I mean, stuff on the horizon for sure. Just the same old.
Now you have a podcast. What's it called? Where can people find it?
So it's called the Song Capture Podcast. It's on all the platforms. A couple years ago, I started this podcast because I really wanted to start hearing the stories behind songs, especially in the worship side of things. I think people know the songs, but they don't know the stories that got to how the songs were crafted. And so I just started reaching out to friends around town and be like, hey, I'd love to have you on. Obviously talk about you, but I want to talk about the story. And I don't want the stories to die, and be forgotten. So so started that a couple years ago. It's honestly been tough to keep up with it because I've been so busy working on projects. So the goal is to maybe resurrect that next year a little bit and keep it. I don't do it near as often as you do. I try to probably do one a month because I don't have time to do it this much. But I love sitting down. I love hearing the stories of songwriters. And I think, like I said, I don't want those stories to die because I think if people will get a bigger grasp of the song if they understand the story behind the song, how the writers wrestled with that to get to that the idea to get to the song. Yeah,
and I think that's important. Not necessarily so much for listeners. I think that the artist's job to sort of share the song the way in the way that it means to the artist, to their fans.
Yeah.
But for the people who love the craft of songwriting, I think it's super important to share the story. And sometimes that story involves someone. One of the co-writers came in, just almost got into an accident, and they talked about this, and the next thing you know, that's how the song came about. It's like, that's very real stuff.
Yeah.
And because I know a lot of times I come in full of stories and stuff to share, where most of a songwrite is me talking or or us all talking about stuff going on that triggers that idea. And next thing you know, it's like someone maybe said, oh, that reminds me of this scripture. And the next thing you know, you're writing a song about that. And it's like, wow, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So, and as far as your podcast, man, I've checked out a couple episodes and phenomenal. The one with Tony Wood, which I've been dying to get Tony Wood on here. Though I haven't even messaged him yet. I don't know if he's a responder to messages or not, but I plan on trying to beg him. And I've said this on a couple of podcasts before. You've written with Tony Wood. Okay. So I'll tell you what I tell everybody is what I imagine a write with Tony Wood is like.
Okay.
I imagine you're in a library. You're in a room full of books, and he wears a cape, and he's actually Doctor Strange. And what happens is, you want to write a song, he opens up a portal, pulls out lyrics, and it's like, here they are. And that's how the song gets written.
You're not far off.
See, that's what everyone said. Exactly that.
No, Tony was actually one of my first pro writes ever. And I think I mentioned that on the podcast. But yeah, he's been a big encourager, and that's just who he is to everybody. I mean, he didn't have favorites. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's just, again, he'll give you constructive criticism because he wants to see you grow, and I love that about him. So
yeah, I mean, he every time I've heard him speak, it's always been super powerful, and
it's a deep well for sure.
It sure is, and I mean, I'm sure by the time he's done, he'll have well over 100 number ones.
Yeah, I'm sure. They keep growing.
He's halfway there.
He's halfway there. Yeah, something like that.
So at this point. But Chris, man, awesome to have you come on.
Thank you, man.
And so again, if you could check him out on his podcast, where can people find you on social media? Instagram? What works good for you?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best place. Chris M. Clayton So,
Okay.
and then chrisclaytonmusic.com. Yeah, that's right. .com is the website for production stuff. So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's been an absolute
Bro.
blast, and look forward to having you come on
Yeah,
down the
man.
road.
I love it. Appreciate it.
All right. Wrap it.